The Friends of John H. Johnson Museum hosted its second John H. Johnson Day and Award ceremony virtually on November 1st. H. Johnson, a native of Arkansas City, Arkansas, was the founder of Johnson Publishing Company, located in Chicago, Illinois, and produced, among other publications, Ebony and Jet magazine. To commemorate the holiday, a panel discussion was hosted and featured former Ebony and Jet magazine staffers Lynn Norment and Roy Betts. Norment served as a writer and managing editor for Ebony magazine in Chicago, and Betts was the assistant editor for Ebony and Jet in its Washington, D.C. bureau. Prior to the start of the panel, Linda Johnson Rice, daughter of John H. Johnson and his wife Eunice, offered opening remarks.
I am delighted to extend greetings to you on this occasion honoring my father, the late and very great John H. Johnson. To the Friends of the John H. Johnson Museum, I commend you from the bottom of my heart on continuing to advance my father's legacy and honoring his memory. Thank you so much.
Moderator Wyatt Jeffries began the panel by asking Norman and Betts to explain what it was like working for John H. Johnson.
Was an incredible experience. During my time there, I felt as though I was working side by side with a living legend, and he truly was that. Mr. Johnson had a colorful personality. He was full of humor, but he could be full of spit and fire too if you messed up or didn't do something quite right. And the word around the company was, and it was open, that if he didn't chew you out a few times, then you weren't well loved. So I wasn't chewed out enough. I mean, a lot, but I do feel that I was well loved, so that's all a part of it. And he was very caring. And for me, he was very nurturing. I consider LaRon Bennett, who was my immediate supervisor for many, many years, to have been a mentor, my mentor, but at times Mr. Johnson personally mentored me. He just had that kind of heart. Remember one time, some of the other editors, and that was when LaRon was in his office writing books, but some of the other editors were giving me a hard time and didn't want to promote me, didn't want to just do the right thing. And they probably were saying things to him about it, but Mr. Johnson called me into his office and said, "Lynn, don't worry about that. I'm going to take care of it. You're doing a great job." And soon after that, I got a promotion and a raise, And Mr. Johnson and I had a number of one-on-one conversations like that where he encouraged me. And so I love that side of him, the mentoring and the nurturing.
Envious in some respects, many respects actually, that Lynn worked in Chicago, the home base for Ebony, for Johnson Publishing Company. I worked in Washington with Simeon Booker, our esteemed Washington bureau chief. And I must say, even though we were in the nation's capital, we felt Mr. Johnson's presence.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that he cared about us. He, without a doubt, gave me an opportunity of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Coming fresh out of Howard University, journalism department, communications, I had every major credential, White House, Congress, Pentagon, State Department. I could cover any and all events. I had access that veteran reporters would not have had. And I was just starting my career. So I'm eternally indebted to Mr. John H. Johnson, Mr. J, as we affectionately knew him,
Mr. J.
one of the greatest publishers to have ever lived and businessman in this country, and widely respected throughout the world. So I just cannot speak enough about Mr. Johnson's influence and impact on me personally and professionally. So we've had great, great, great times as a result of his leadership and his courage.
Both Betts and Norman discuss Ebony's impact on American life over the decades of its existence.
You know, the impact that Ebony has had is truly incredible. I grew up in a small town not far from Memphis here. Ebony was a staple in our household. We used it for homework, and I used it to daydream, to learn that the world was so much bigger than my small town or just Tennessee. And back then, I knew I wanted to be a writer. That was a great interest to me, and I did, well in anything I had to write. But with Ebony there, it was like a mentor in the household, because I didn't know anyone else who was a writer, but having Ebony there on our living room table was like having a journalism mentor. So I aspired to be a journalist, and that's when people in my family or even in the area said, "Journalist, what is it that you want to do now?" But it was Ebony that inspired me and made me realize I could do and be whatever I wanted to do or be. Because in Ebony, you saw beautiful Black people working for corporations, owning businesses, working for the government, in politics. And of course, we saw the entertainers as well, but it just broadened the worldview for me, but also for everyone across the Mid-South, but across the country and the world. Ebony gave us something to aspire to. It was a great influence on me and everyone, including the white community.
Mr. Betts agrees.
In Washington, it was political, I covered the Jimmy Carter administration, and I had an opportunity to really see the inner workings of the Congress and the administration, the Congressional Black Caucus at that time, with Perrin Mitchell, Charles Diggs, and so many of the great Shirley Chisholm, who were no nonsense. They took no prisoners when they took government agency and department heads to task for not awarding contracts to our businesses, not employing our people and promoting our people. And so what I found, coming out of the 60s, which was all about civil rights and human rights, getting the right to vote and be able to have access to housing and transportation. Okay, just the basics of everyday living as human beings. We then looked ahead in the 70s and 80s and even beyond to economic development, finding ways to share in that economic pie that was so limited. And the Congressional Black Caucus back in the 70s and 80s really agitated, irritated the Jimmy Carter administration. It carried on into the Reagan years, but I mean, there was a lot that I was exposed to thanks to Mr. Johnson and Johnson Publishing Company and working with Simeon Booker, who was Simeon covered the civil rights movement at a time when it was very dangerous for any journalist, let alone a Black journalist, covering Mississippi, Emmett Till case, et cetera, et cetera. And Simeon definitely saw how you needed to continually keep the pressure on the government and tell the stories, good, bad, and the ugly. And we had, you know, some very interesting articles in Jet that even Mr. Johnson sometimes wouldn't agree with, but we had the opportunity, and I thank him for that. Give him all the credit for that.
The Friends of the John H. Johnson Museum named Norman and Betts as its 2020 John H. Johnson Journalism and Media Award recipients. They also named Dr. Mary Benjamin their 2020 Humanitarian Award recipient and Mr. Jimmy Cunningham its 2020 Business and Entrepreneur Award recipient. Dr. Benjamin expressed her appreciation of John H. Johnson's legacy, as well as the hard work that the Friends of the John H. Johnson Committee did to ensure that his birthday became a state holiday.
Getting this day approved as a holiday in the state of Arkansas. Number two, developing his home place as a site for others to come to see.
During his acceptance remarks, Mr. Cunningham reflected, among other things, his introduction to the Johnson Publishing Company's various magazines.
I have a degree from Grambling State University. I have a degree from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, but I'm also an alum of a publication that wasn't mentioned, Ebony Jr. You see, when I came on board, after reviewing Jet magazine and opening it basically to look at the top 25 soul R&B hits, at some point around 73 or 74, when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, this new publication came out. It was Ebony Jr. And it was a publication that targeted African-American kids and taught us about our history in ways that we could connect to and ways that we had fun with. And so I followed my immersion into this fun Black world of role models and of imagination through that publication.